Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to another Kickass Career Conversation. I am Kim, my lovely co-host.
Louise, I'm over here today.
And we are joined today by Jeff and Jennifer, and we're going to learn all about them in just a minute. But before we get started in our deep, wonderful conversation about making conscious career choices today, we'd love to start out this week like we start every week. What are we celebrating? So this is a time when we all share just something that we are celebrating, that we're excited about, that's going on in our lives. Louise, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I had a week. I just wrote about this in my newsletter. I'm exhausted and exhilarated all at the same time. I don't know really how that happens, but the month of May for me it's flown by. But when I can pause for a moment and look back, like I've put out some pretty big things, and I feel pretty successful. So today I was reflecting back on that. And yeah, I'm tired, but I'm like it's that good kind of like tired, where I feel like, yeah, I'm really feel like I'm moving the needle this week, and I'm celebrating that, and I'm celebrating the help that I'm getting from folks to help me move that needle. But it feels, yeah, exhausting, but like that good kind of like, whew, exhausting. But how about you, Jennifer? What are you celebrating this week?
Wow, what a great question to kick us off. It really does orient our focus. I am celebrating the dance between making shit happen and surrendering it to the universe, and allowing, with faith and trust, that what I seek is seeking me, and what I can't even see as possible is unfolding in perfect divine timing. So the dance between what's my participation in the world and being alive and vital and a co-creative human, and also surrendering to the idea that I even know what that is. And that prayer of use me, flow with me, and I surrender to what wants to come through me.
Wow, that's beautiful. And I know that dance well.
Yes. Very TikTok.
Exactly.
Not so easy at times.
No. Jeff, how about you? What are you celebrating?
Well, thanks for having us on, and thanks again for the question. I love starting with this. I'm going to go more personal and practical and say I'm about to move the home that I've lived in for 15 years. We're saying goodbye, and we're moving a little bit further east to Michigan, the great state of Michigan. Goodbye, Indiana. And so I'm celebrating a transition and being intentional and thoughtful about a transition, but also trying to take some time and look around at this wonderful home that has really been a home. It's a great structure, but it has been a home. And we've raised 4 kids there and had so many memories, and trying to stop and say thank you to the home itself. So that has been a big celebration. I also just want to say exhausted and exhilarated is like the theme of my last 30 years. So I'm going to take that shamelessly and steal it. And one of the things that I'm exhausted and exhilarated about is raising those 4 kids I just mentioned. And one of them, shout out to Ellie Shuck, who graduates from high school next week. So we're celebrating that too.
Woohoo! Huge accomplishment. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and for me, what am I celebrating? I asked the question, and then I'm like, oh yeah, I have to answer it. I think what I'm celebrating is presence. This week has been Jennifer, you were talking about that dance between, right, kind of where you surrender and where you're being intentional and intentional action. And for me, being really present in the moment is where I'm at in that dance, is needing to continue to remind myself that right here, right now is all that I need to focus on. Jeff, much like you, I have a move in my future. I unfortunately don't know where we're moving to. So that is that unsettling part, right? So being present and saying, but right now, right here, beautiful home, beautiful family, and a lot to celebrate. So Good stuff. Good stuff.
Mhm.
Before we go any further, I do want to introduce the two of you and some of your work to the world. So, Jennifer Mulholland and Jeff Shuck are the co-founders of Plenty Consulting, and for the last decade have helped thousands of conscious leaders and businesses grow in revenue, impact, and fulfillment. Together, they help for-profit and nonprofit leaders and organizations create their strategies, grow their fundraising, innovate new programs, and develop conscious cultures. They recently released their book, Leading with Light, Choosing Conscious Leadership When You're Ready for More. I think that came out in March, if I saw that correctly.
Excellent.
The book offers a blueprint to help you become more aware of what works for you, more attuned to your soul's deepest calling, which I am all about, woohoo, and more confident in the choices you make. Through their decades of experience leading, consulting, and coaching, Jennifer and Jeff share their simple and powerful wisdom to help you know yourself better and trust what you know. Thank you both so much for being on the show today. We're so excited to have you here.
Thank you. That was nice. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
So trust what you know. Kim just kind of ended on that note, and I'm really curious to lean into that a little bit today and ask about how has that trust been between the two of you? Here you are in this co-partnership space. Kim and I have been co-partnering for a while too, and there's a lot of trust that that goes into a relationship like that.
That's fun. Maybe I'll just kind of tee it up. I would say it takes a ton of practice and dancing, of experimenting how you build trust. I think for most relationships, whether they're in personal or professional or our one life, we like to say that we don't live a personal life and a professional life. We live one life. That the rooting of trust is much more energetic. It's much more of a soul connection that creates a foundation of inquiry, of wonderment, of union, alignment to be able to share a path or be in relationship with a common path. And I would say Jeff and I fortunately had that kind of pull, that soul recognition the moment our paths crossed about 30 years ago, 26, 7 years ago. And as a result of being in communion and conversation on a like path, we felt more vitalized, and that energy started to kind of build trust in how we co-led even long ago. I love the point of like emphasizing your knowing, because we talk a lot about that in the book of how do you individually trust your knowing? How does your knowing speak to you? How do you know when something's on or off to you, or in alignment with your light, we like to say. And that has a lot to do with self-awareness and being present and really tuning into that intuitive nature that we all have, our body's signals to know or to teach us and show us when we know something is on or off. And in the spirit of your knowing and trusting in a relationship, um, you know, my belief is in order for us to have healthy relationships with others, we have to first fortify the relationship with ourselves. So trusting ourselves and coming from a place of, I trust my knowing, and I'm going to be vulnerable in sharing that knowing with another, and hoping that that other person is going to respect and trust me enough in my knowing that it will create a safe space for them to share their knowing. And then somewhere in the in between, or in the common share space, you find a collective knowing, if that makes sense. So the individual contributes to the collective. And I think that has really been front and center with Jeff and I. About we've always felt that there's something greater than ourselves to be a part of, that we're here to help each other self-actualize and to do good in the world. And how we ground that is like, wow, through a lot of commitment to alignment. We have awesome hour every single morning on our calendar, 10 a.m. Mountain, 12 o'clock Eastern. Now it's changing because Jeff's switching time zones and we've got to figure all that out. But it's literally one of the best hours of our days that we look forward to foster trust, alignment. We've learned, I'll just give you a couple examples. We've learned to, when we are out of alignment, to do certain things that kind of give us space, because we really believe in the power of space. The space to allow your thoughts to digest, the space to gain new perspective, the space to not, want to punch somebody in the face and giving yourself a timeout. So we not often, but sometimes have to do that with each other because we're very passionate people. And as we share our own individual knowing, it can come across as convincing or trying to get the other person to buy and believe what we want them to buy and believe. So we have hand signals. And as soon as that hand signal comes up, it's a commitment to say, we're getting off the phone, we're taking a time out, and we'll come back. And so I think that we've learned some tools to continue to fortify the trust and honor the individual knowing, and find ways to create the space to align, and then the space when we're not aligned to allow ourselves to kind of come up to a better, I don't know, vibe, if you will, to be able to engage in the conversation. So that's I don't know. I just went down a rabbit hole, but I'll let you go for that, Jeff. Take it where you want.
Well, no, I think you covered it. Maybe a couple things I just underline. I love that you started there. That was a great question to start with. And for anybody listening live, I'd just say, we don't sit down beforehand and get the questions. So that was a lovely surprise. You've surprised us twice already. Instead of like, why did you write a book? I'd underline a couple things. One, just the point of trust. Trust is a choice. I think we firmly believe in the commitment is to be self-aware, to understand where you're coming from, to understand where your ego's speaking instead of, your kinder intention is speaking. So that idea of trusting yourself first, and trusting that you don't have to be great at everything, and trusting that you aren't, creates room for other people. And the other thing I'd say that I just want to underline is this idea of shared intention. And I think we're great at that. Alignment comes from having shared intention. And I think when we work with groups where trust has maybe gotten off the rails, or is not where everyone wants it to be, it's that there's been no time to sit back and say, what are we trying to accomplish together? And most of the time, we're not trying to accomplish being heard, being positional or being right. Before Plenty, I led a much larger team. And I think sometimes I was great at that and sometimes I wasn't. And the times I wasn't, it's because I wasn't clear. My intention often was just to be heard or to be correct. Well, you can be correct. You can be the most correct person in the room a lot. That doesn't mean you're going to actually accomplish what you want to accomplish. So I think we invest a lot of time in just saying, what are we trying to do here? And that creates space for each other, and it creates room to listen to we say the most important conversation that you're always having is the conversation with yourself. Do I believe this? What do I really think? Am I saying what I mean? Do I mean what I say? And creating space for that conversation to be held authentically allows us to create space for each other. And then when you create space with other people, it's really not that difficult to choose trust, to choose to trust them. It's when we're trying to talk over them or be heard or interrupt them or get our point in, then trust is difficult because there's no room for anyone else or anything else. So I think I went down my own rabbit hole there, but what a great question. Great question.
They're beautiful rabbit holes. And that's what we love in our conversations here. And it's part of the reason we don't send out the questions ahead of time, is because we do want them to be organic. And we know we have a sense of who our guests are. And so we hope that our questions land well. So I'm glad that landed. So you're using terms like knowing and alignment and intention. These are all words that I think Louise and I also both use a lot of. And really, I think what we're talking about here is that level of consciousness. And you talk a lot about conscious leadership. And I'm wondering if for those people who are like, these are words that sound scary, right? How do I have a conversation with myself? I'm wondering if you could kind of open those windows for people a little bit who maybe this topic is a little bit, what are we even saying? Would you be willing to do that a little bit?
Yeah, maybe I'll Jen's deferring to me. I trust that you mean that. So let me start. We have a few ways we explain it, and there's a 3-part definition that maybe Jen, I'll invite you to explain for people. But I would start by saying one of the most important things for us in choosing to write a book, because the world has a lot of leadership books, right? Do we need another leadership book? Was a question that we asked ourselves, actually not when we started the book, but 10 years ago when we launched a leadership retreat called Lantern, on which a lot of the book is based. And Lantern was kind of the playground for a lot of the book. And 10 years ago, we asked that question, like, do we really have something to say here? There's been so much said, done, written, explored about leadership. And I think like any great entrepreneur pursuing a kick-ass career, we felt like we did have a little piece to say. We have our own thing we want to add to it. And what we wanted to add was the idea that so much of the standard, maybe traditional leadership curriculum or practice is around what things you do. What do you do? How can you act in a way? What are the recipes? What are the 10 things to do, or the 5, habits of highly successful people, all of that work. And that works great. And that work is needed. But at some part in your career or your exploration, your growth as a human being, not just as a worker, you kind of have mastered that. And you get to the point where someone else's checklist doesn't really apply to you, doesn't really work. Your mileage starts to really vary from what you're reading in the book. And that was what was interesting to us, is that how do we help people be more instead of talking about things that they could do? And there's lots of great books about things you do, like I just said, and we often refer people to those and talk about some of those in the book. But that was where the playground started, is conscious leadership is this idea of being more. And then we unpack it and we talk about kind of 3 specific things. And maybe Jen, you costume change and background change for Jen. Let's just acknowledge that. Let's acknowledge what happened there.
For those that are just listening, Jen was outside and now she's inside.
I'm so sorry about that, but it's such a great illustration of the theme of the book is about giving ourselves permission to be human. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you were watching, but this wind gust came up and I was like, oh shit, my hair's flying in the microphone. I can't hear. My teenage daughter and niece are coming out on their bikinis and sun hitting on the deck. Oh my gosh. So apologies. I had to change the scene so you could be. I was
going to say, so you could be comfortable.
And I could be, and then my dog, yeah. Oh my gosh.
And see, and I had this, I had this own narrative in my head about, Jen's turned her camera off and she doesn't realize it. Like, she's pressed a button that she doesn't know. We're going to do an IT intervention at some point. But, and there, I was totally wrong. That was what another brilliant surprise of this podcast already.
Right. And then I'm looking at my background. I'm like, oh, the pillow is on the floor. It's not on the chair. So this is the stuff that Leading with Light kind of surfaces, of giving ourselves permission to be messy, not put together, to be freaking real, to let all the pressure of how we're supposed to perform and be. And it's interesting because we're live, right? There's no editing. It's like, how do we just give ourselves permission and be in the comfort of ourselves, that some days we wake up and we feel like shit. We don't feel motivated. We don't feel attuned to our light, but giving ourselves permission that that's okay. There's nothing wrong with us, that our light is always on no matter how we feel, that we can trust it, and that the the path of life, it's not linear and upwards always. Sometimes it is very crooked and jaggedy and up and down. And anyway, I am so speaking to myself because as I share it, I calm, right? Because they're unconscious pressures of performance and of how we want to be received, perceived, seen, and gotten. So
Absolutely. I just want to jump in here for just a second. I know, Louise, you had probably another question queued, but last week on our conversation, we went down this path, and I threw a curveball at our guest then, is with this idea of failing forward. And Jen, what you were just sharing about just being human, that idea of failing forward feels very stressful to me, because it doesn't allow for us to be human and fail on our butts or fall on our butts. And so I'm wondering if that idea, how does that idea, whether it's failing forward or something else or just being human, how does that continue to play itself out for yourselves and for those that you work with?
may I ask you a quick question of clarification?
Yeah, of
What
course.
do you mean by that? Like I can think I know what you mean by that, but I really want to make sure I am with you in your interpretation of what you mean by failing forward versus failing on your butt.
Yeah. So there's this pressure that I feel, particularly, I'm going to speak into this particularly as a woman. I feel like there's this idea that we always have to be in forward momentum, that we always have to be pushing forward. And so failing forward to me seems to be language that again pushes us forward and keeps us only looking back there, not pausing, not taking time for reflection, and not saying, you know what, I failed, I fell down, and I'm going to either go sideways or I'm going to maybe retrace my steps for a little while. So that's kind of the direction that I'm coming from in that question. Does that help?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's great. I think it's on men too. I think it's a cultural pressure. As you say it, I definitely come from I think there's a positive generational pass down of self-improvement and
Yeah.
performance and being better. And ever since I came into this world, I've been wired to be better. Like it's just as an athlete, like to win, to accomplish, to like there was just another goal I wanted to get to. And in my holistic life, I'm still wired that way. So it's so interesting of how inbred and unconscious it is to want to continue to be on the hamster wheel of growth, of improvement, of ascension, of awakening. I mean, put your language
Yeah.
to it, whatever that speaks to you. And I will tell you, I'm in it. I rarely give myself permission because I'm not to really like fail backwards.
Mhm.
You know, I do believe that whether we try or not, if you look at nature, um, nature's nature is growth. And so maybe the roots go downward, but it's not going backwards, right? That we're in constant evolution, constant motion. So where I relate I'm so there with you of like this wrapping of the pressure to perform, the pressure to accomplish, the pressure to be more, do more, have more. That sometimes, yes, I'm feeding into what's being fed to me, but it's also coming from within me as an intrinsic motivation to grow and to grow consciously. I would love to say that I have mastered the art of self-care and tender practice and, mothering the mother in me as I do so well with others. No, I suck at it, as most people do. I'm getting a lot better, but I really think I can feel it like viscerally, is like almost taking this cloak or angel wings is how I experience it, or something that's like a cozy blanket that when I have messed up or when I haven't been at my best or when I perceive that I have failed, to wrap myself in the tender care of being okay being there. And that space oftentimes passes quite quickly in the spirit of, I'm so wired as an optimist, and I like naturally default to the positive lesson I can get out of the failure, that and maybe that's all trickery, right, to get me out of that space. I'm imagining it is. But that coping mechanism to constantly look at, like, what is the gift on offer of my perception of failing? Because oftentimes it's just a perception. It's really change. And if you look at change's natural state, change is growth. And so can it be that we kind of can fail backwards? I don't think so. I think it's just always on this trajectory of forward or uplifting evolution.
If can I tag in
Please.
on this?
Yeah.
I think I love the part about the labels and the meaning we put to things that might not be there, and I definitely think that's a point that's interesting. But I also think, there isn't expansion without contraction is something that we talk about in the book. And the example we use, Jen, since you brought up nature, is if you had never seen a maple tree before and the first maple tree that you saw was in January, you would think, oh, what a pathetic thing. Like, wow, that it's dead. But that's part of its state, and it looks completely different in April, and it looks amazing in October. And there is a cycle to things in the natural world that we have tried to stamp out of our careers and our lives, right? That we don't often see. And I think that's the connection I'd make between your question and, Jen, your idea of, can you actually ever go backwards? I think we just don't allow ourselves the kind of, sometimes you need to hibernate. Sometimes your relationships hibernate. Sometimes, it's like when you go on a flight and they say the closest exit may be behind you. Yeah, sometimes you need to turn around and retrace your steps. We've decided that that's negative. And a big part of, maybe not the book specifically, but I do think our work with teams and with individuals is getting aware of the meaning that we put to things again. And even looking at the sign behind you, Kim, do epic shit, right? Which is, by the way, is so plenty. Yes, like, let's go out there, like, make no small plans, right? And at the same time, well, what if I were to do shit?
Mm-hmm.
And what if I didn't even have to do shit? I could just do. And what if I could just be? And then from that place, how would I change how I look at things, and how would I, step forward if I chose to? But so I think I want to be careful of not just talking in semantics, because I think your question's absolutely, again, another wonderful question. There's pressure that we're putting on ourselves, and others, I think, put on ourselves always to achieve. And that's what I hear in your question about failing forward. Like, geez, can I just be a mess? Yes, you can be a mess. Can you get fired? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Can your business fail? Absolutely. And you know what that makes you? Human, like everyone else. And you don't even have to say, like, I think sometimes we do it to ourselves too. Well, all successful entrepreneurs fail. And like, hey, Thomas Edison failed 999 times. Whether that's even true, who knows? But we've all heard that folklore, right? But that, even to your point, steps us past the failure itself. Like, maybe failure doesn't have to serve anything. Maybe it is just part of what it is. So I think we're getting to actually that idea of conscious leadership, right? 90% of it is just being aware, and then being intentional about, am I choosing the labels that work for me and the people around me? If I want to choose do epic shit, if I want to choose fail forward, yeah, then do it, and do it consciously, and do it, but make it a choice. Don't make it programming. So I think the question is awesome. And another rabbit hole, and then I'll stop, is man, it's everywhere. This acceleration, this need for us to, like, achieve ourselves. We talk about the arms race and mindfulness all the time now, about how mindfulness has become an app. And now your phone or your watch reminds you if you're not being calm enough. Like, are you kidding me? Like, does that need to be a competition now? Right? Like, we need to outpace each other in yoga. All of these tools that were designed to help us slow down, we've even kind of militarized those. So I love the awareness around, well, maybe I could just fail. Maybe I can go backwards. Your car goes in reverse for a reason, right? And sometimes we have to too.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Jeff. Yeah.
Yeah. Whew. Right. The words we use, right, can just come with so much baggage itself. And then we're trying to unpack that baggage and then trying to find our own way. And it is messy, right? Like we're opening up the suitcase, we're throwing all kinds of things out. And that's how we figure things out a lot of times. One of the things that stood out for me in the book was this idea of like goal, right? This pushing and trying to achieve and attain. And there's a little bit of a difference I hear between this idea of goal and this idea of intention. And why should folks be spending more time on setting this intention and being intentional?
Yeah. Well, we are absolutely in control of the space we are coming from. And we can choose whether we make that conscious or not. And that's intention. Intention is the space we're coming from to show up in our day, to show up in a conversation. What is the experience we want to create? What is the experience we want to leave others experiencing as a result of being in our presence? What is the feeling we want to have? And that's very different than a goal. And we can talk, maybe Jeff can add some commentary to this, but goals are very concrete. They're outcome based. They're usually measurable, right? And they're very form. You can think of intention as more formless, right? It's more expansive. It allows room for other people to participate in co-creating the intention if you choose to share it with them in a way that you might not recognize, that you can achieve an experience without necessarily having it be so fine-tuned by a goal. So setting your intention in the beginning of the day, at the start of your business meeting, um, if you're having a hard conversation with somebody and you really need to address an issue you're having, you could say, my intention is to speak my truth with kindness and leave the conversation feeling better than I did going into it. Super easy intention. Or my intention for this business meeting is that we leave having a shared commitment to designing a process for whatever. And it just allows room for the universe to play, for other people to play, and for you to play in a way that is not so sealed in. Like we've done a really good job, I think, of making things that are concrete valuable, but we rebel against the glass ceiling. We rebel against the boxes we have self-inflicted, putting ourselves in and putting our employees and team members and lovers and children in, right? We just have these unconscious boxes. So intention likes to play outside of those boxes. It's more expansive and it's really powerful because when we are clear about what works for us, how our body speaks to us, what is in alignment and out of alignment with our light, with that awareness, we can then choose with intention of how we want to manifest our day or experience a conversation or go about certain tasks. It's very different than goals. And maybe I'll have Jeff, because we have lovely metaphors that kind of make the ethereal that I'm talking about more digestible.
Well,
Jeff,
and
you wanna
that
tackle
was great. And it's another great question. And I think maybe what I would just add to that is, we talk about intention is kind of the rudder of the sailboat, right? If we were standing at the shore of Lake Ontario and we said we're gonna come meet you halfway across, like you come from Canada and we'll meet you in the middle. We both have this goal and we know where we're going. We're not going to get very far if our boat has a broken rudder. right? So the intention is where we're pointing. And I think one of the reasons that we talk about this a lot is because, like Jen said, goals kind of have a better PR team. I think goals get all the publicity, but we don't often talk about our come from and how we're trying to go into a conversation. To give you a specific example from my life right now, we're selling our home that we've been in, as I mentioned. And so that's the goal, right? To sell the house. My wife and I were quite intentional, though, about how we pursued that. And one of the intentions is that it's a successful transaction, not just for us, but for the buyers. We want them to be thrilled because this home was there before us. It's going to be there after them. And we want someone to love the home like we did. And we want them to feel like they were totally fulfilled in buying it. And that's really different than saying the intention is that we get as much money as we can. Right. Well, that totally sets, but that's what we see in especially in business, but I would say personally too. People say, I'm going to run a marathon because I'm turning 60. Well, say that your intention is to meet new people and maybe get in a little better shape versus your intention being to be the top person in my age group. Like just changing the intention, changing the rudder where you're pointing the boat really can change your entire experience, even though you're traveling to the same goal. So I guess we often find, maybe the last thing I'll say is, because people have been taught a lot about goals, usually problems that people have in achieving the goals are maybe issues that can be fixed, not with a different goal, but with a different intention. And so often when people come to us and say, my career isn't kick-ass or my team isn't kick-ass, we start with, well, what's the come from? Like, we'll get to the goals and there might be some tweaking there, but usually it's just like how we're walking forward, not what we're walking to. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, I'm sitting here absolutely right, nodding away. We can get so stuck in that outside, like how, right? Like that thing that's outside of us. And when we can just slow down and turn the light inside, we become so much more empowered around, right, the journey and how we're showing up. It's more inclusive, it's more fulfilling, it's more whole, like not just holistic, but like whole. And we and so often we're out there trying to figure out how to do and how to right out there. So I love that, because we really are turning the tables. Kim and I talk all the time about how do we turn the tables on the way that things are done in the world of work, in the world of leadership, in the world of, right, social connections. Like, how do we now start to empower and embody what that is? And it does start here and moves out. It's not the other way around.
No, I love that for sure. So I just looked at the time do you have another 3 hours to continue the conversation? I feel like not only are there rabbit holes like that you've already gone down, but that I would like to go down so many more with both of you. I mean, this is a beautiful conversation. If there were one takeaway, one golden nugget that you wanted to make sure that people really heard very, very clearly, what would that be for you?
That you're enough, you're worthy, that your presence is so powerful, and don't buy the bullshit that other people and our culture and society have told you or unconsciously bought in, that you have to be more to be enough. When we sit with what you were saying about our presence, and we can really bring ourselves back from worrying about what's going to happen or figuring out the future, if we can really bring our presence here, which is a constant practice because we get hijacked all the time. I don't know if anybody has mastered this. I think it's just a nature of being human that we get pulled out and then we pull ourselves back in. But when we can fully harness our presence and trust that our presence is valuable, it's worthy, it's powerful, it's needed, that when we will take the self-inflicted pressure off of ourselves to think we have to prepare more for the upcoming moments, that we have to be put together more for the upcoming moments, that if we can just give ourselves permission and bravery and muster the courage to show up with our full presence and bringing our full attention to whatever is in front of us, I really believe the world will change. If we go about that in the most graceful, positive way that we often give others, if we can give that grace to ourselves and that encouragement that we're enough by just showing up fully in our light and trusting that that's enough, it doesn't need to be dressed up or packaged up or prepared in a better way. Like right now going forward, if you could just show up messy, beautiful, expanded, contracted, real, that's the world that I think is gonna come out in a most beautiful way, and it's will birth a better and more beautiful life, and it will birth a better, more aligned career.
Lovely.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah. Jeff, how about for you?
Oh, it's hard to top that. I think,
True.
that's the core essence of plenty, is that you are enough. I think there's a lot of supporting points to it. I guess maybe the follow-up I'd just say is for people saying, well, that sounds great, but how do I get there? How do I get to that place? Or, wow, that seems like a really privileged view. Only people have been given enough can feel like they are enough. I think that, which is I think an area we explore a lot with people, or people who say like, no, I keep getting evidence that I'm not enough, honestly, that I got to do more, like that I got to earn this one more thing. I guess where I'd go with the next golden nugget, with the silver nugget to support the golden nugget, is what we said earlier about, we're choosing all the time. Michael Neal says, we're not the camera, we're the projector. We might say it a little bit differently, but we're choosing the context for our lives all the time. We have much less control of the circumstances of our lives than we imagine, which is a very unsettling thing for people to really get their head around. The things that we think we control, we really don't. And we both have stories in the book about being confronted with that in real brutal ways. Losing my dad to a car crash, like unexpectedly years and years ago. You just get these moments where you see, God, all of the stuff that I'm doing, my daily planner, the budget, the strategic plan, my retirement savings, like none of that. I control none of that, right? The choice that I do have is the choice. I mean, we were talking about it earlier. What we do have an ability to influence, we often abdicate. How I see things, what context I put to things, what importance I put to things, how I choose to see my day, even what I choose to digest and how I choose to think about it. Like all of those things are actually the important choices that we have, that we often kind of unconsciously just relinquish. And then we put our faith in these fictions that actually aren't real. And I would say this point in our work has become more meaningful and easier to make since COVID, where so many people lived through this experience of, complete realization that, wow, all these things that I'm depending on, maybe they aren't as real as I thought they were. But that doesn't mean you can't depend on yourself. You can trust yourself, I think, is the corollary to you are enough. You can trust that if you feel like, oh, I'm procrastinating going to work, you can trust that you're telling yourself something about what you think about the work. You can trust that if someone is speaking to you and you feel like, I don't know, I think they're kind of full of shit, that you can trust that instinct. You can trust if you feel like I'm made to do epic shit and I'm not, that you are.
Mm-hmm.
So just like, if we live in this world where we are enough, like Jen is pointing us to, it invites us to the trust that you started the conversation with, right? And the invitation to be here, to trust who I am, to trust that I'm meant to be here, that the odds of me being here are so remote in the way I'm configured. So I have a part to play. And maybe your part is massive without anyone needing to reward you for it, recognize you for it, pay you for it. What if that were true? How would you choose to live and how would you choose to look at your life? So I'll stop there, but thank you for asking.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I just want to use your term to underline just a little bit as part of what you just said is something that we always say here and we always remind people is you are in choice. Every moment of every day you are in choice. So what choice are you going to make? And that comes from, right, all the things that we've been talking about today. That deep, deep knowing. Jennifer and Jeff, I clearly, and I knew this from, following your work for a little while, clearly you are two people that can help people find that within themselves and work with themselves as leaders and as teams. So thank you for the work that you do in the world.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing this time. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you both on. So thank you so much. Where can folks find you, connect with you? Where's the best place for our listeners?
Thank you. What a pleasure it's been
Yeah,
to be in
thank
your
you.
company. And yes, we need to continue lots longer and have you on our podcast. We have one it's called Plenty for Everyone, but it would be so wonderful to have you as our guest to continue the conversation. You can find us at plentyconsulting.com or on social handles at Plentyco. And if you're interested in the book, Leading with Light, Choosing Conscious Leadership When You're Ready for More, you can find that on Amazon or Barnes & Noble or Kindle, wherever you like to find your books. And the audio version will be coming out in a few months, so that's not up yet.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
And we also have all those links in the show notes as well.
Yes.
I want to thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for the care that you're showing us with the questions that you're asking. And thank you for how you lead and show up in the world and the passion and joy that you obviously bring to what you do. It just walks in front of you. And
Yeah.
the website was really fun to discover and see. Your energy is infectious. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you. Louise, what do we have coming up next as we continue to walk in our light? I love it.
Absolutely. So as always, you can find Kim and I at yourkickasscareer.com. So you can pop over there and see what we have going on. Next week, Following Your Calling with Allie. It's going to be another great show. So please tune in. Same bat time, same bat channel as always for now. And stay tuned for all kinds of
What's
things
next?
that we have coming up. So thanks, everyone. Again, Jennifer and Jeff, thank you so much. Thank you to our listeners. We appreciate you and your time. And we can't wait to chat with you all again.
Okay. Bye for now.
Take
Bye,
care.
y'all.
Bye.
Bye.